All right, well, let's cruise back to 1995 for that trailer. That just sounds like or something. There we go.
It's Tebow's bike.
Remember when we first met John McClane? Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down to Nakatomi Tower at the Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Alan, John McClane kicked ass.
Welcome back to Chat the Movies, the podcast where we answer the question, were the movies we loved when we were growing up really that good? Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why don't they make movies like they used to? Can you still remember spending your Friday nights searching for the perfect movie rental at Blockbuster Video? Do you know what Blockbuster Video is? If you answered yes, then this is the podcast for you. I am one of your hosts, Gene Lyons, and alongside me are my co-hosts, Ash Puff Puff Give Jones.
Hi, y'all.
And returning back to the pod, it's everyone's favorite, Big D, Dick Ebert.
Woo!
Hi, good evening, everyone.
You sound incredibly well hydrated.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, each week we take a look back in time and decide if our favorite films still hold up. The movies we cover are chosen by you, the listeners, who generously commission the films you love. If you'd like to see all the movies we have covered, will cover, or want to choose one for yourself, please visit shatpod.com and have a look. At the end of each podcast, we'll provide you, the audience, with the number of wipes each movie take to get off your respective butts. So thank you so much for listening. If you have not already, hit that subscribe button and share with a friend. That's how we help the podcast grow. Additionally, you can subscribe to our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we have TV series such as Westworld, Lovecraft Country, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, True Detective, and Watchmen. Find all that information and past episodes at shatpod.com/TV. And finally, to hang out with us live, follow and subscribe to our Twitch channel, shatpod.com/Twitch, where you play video games and host watch parties. All that being said, Big D, what movie are we reviewing tonight?
Well, Gene, before we go into tonight's movie, let me just take a quick second to address this evening's movie. This was supposed to have been recorded like 2 or 3 weeks ago, but this became one of those cursed films that just could not happen. It was a mixed bag of power outages, internet going down, and then me being hospitalized. So I'm going to give you a quick PSA, people. If you're going to be outside for a prolonged period of time on a very hot day, it is important that you adequately hydrate. Big D did not do that when I went to the Strawberry Festival with Emma, and I actually got myself into a case of AFib and was in the emergency room and then in the hospital for a couple of days. Thankfully, I'm better now. I've learned my lesson, and I will take better care of myself in the future. But back to tonight's movie. And this is one that's long overdue for one of our listeners, Braylon Dewey, who wanted us to go back to 1418 West 126th Street, Los Angeles, and join Smokey and Craig on the porch for the 1995 comedy, Friday.
Well, and Braylon keeps it real short and sweet and says, "Greetings, Shat Crew. Thanks for reviewing another beloved classic movie from my childhood. I don't want to take up much time. I just wanted to say thank you for all the years of great entertainment you have brought me and the rest of the Shat loyalists. With much love, Braylon D."
Oh, I love this letter. There's like no pressure to talk about anything in particular, which is great for Friday because we're going to talk about everything in particular. Well, Friday is a 1995 buddy stoner film written by Ice Cube and DJ Pooh. The first installment in the Friday franchise, the film stars Ice Cube, Chris Tucker, Nia Long, Bernie Mac, Tiny Zeus Lister Jr., and John Witherspoon. In Friday, unemployed friends Craig Jones and Smokey face troubles after becoming indebted to a local drug dealer. While developing the film, Ice Cube and DJ Pooh wanted to counteract the violent and menacing reputation of the hood, and New Line Cinema granted finance in exchange for a seasoned comedian in one of the lead roles. Ice Cube and DJ Pooh quickly settled on Chris Tucker during casting. The film was the directorial debut for F. Gary Gray, who previously was known as a music video director. Friday was theatrically released on April 26, 1995, and received positive reviews from critics and was a commercial success, grossing $27 million worldwide. It then obtained a large cult following, inspiring internet memes and pop culture references. It launched a media franchise with the sequels Next Friday in 2000 and Friday After Next in 2002, which also have gained a cult following despite their negative reviews. So Big D, Ash, we always ask what your memories are of the movie we're covering. Tonight it's Friday. Big D, we'll start with you. What do you remember?
So, Gene, I can remember when this movie came out in 95. I was in high school and a group of my friends went to see it. I had not smoked pot yet. So a lot of the humor in this film taught me about what I thought getting high would be like. But this was a very different movie. I grew up in the suburbs of New York. So the idea of an African-American family in Los Angeles, what they dealt with, it's the same when you watch any other culturally different movies. My Big Fat Greek Wedding or whatever. It was something I had never experienced. I thought it was very funny, very original. And it's something that I've enjoyed to this day.
Yeah, this is one of those movies that I don't remember the first time that I saw it. For me, this movie just like kind of has always existed. It's always been kind of ingrained in my memory. And I've loved it each of the times that I've seen it. This was a big thing on replay when I was in college, especially. We watched this movie all the time. And I was really happy to review it today.
A lot of times the term timeless is thrown around like this film is timeless. Friday really fits that term perfectly. I was surprised when we agreed to do the movie that it came out in 1995. I could have sworn it came out when I was in college, which I didn't go to college until 98. And then it took on like this second life as a meme machine. There's so many memes that came out of Friday. Bye, Felicia, the Smokey and Craig leaning away on the porch with the damn, like that's forever fresh in your mind. And this is a movie that it's hard to have any sort of nostalgia factor with, even though we've seen it many, many times, because it feels like it could have come out yesterday.
You see, but I think a lot of movies that we've done recently from the 90s, you can feel it's a 90s film, the way they dress, the way they act, the way they talk, the technology. This movie, and the topic is timeless. It is friends sitting out on the porch, shooting the shit, watching their neighbors. This movie was 1995, but it could have been any time because that is still such a relevant thing that people do.
All right, well, let's cruise back to 1995 for that trailer.
Now, your mama told me what happened to you yesterday. How the hell you gonna get fired on your day off?
Damn!
Look, she bending over.
Hi, Miss Parker. Hi, boy. Miss Parker just don't know.
Come here.
What's up, Big Perm? I mean, Big Worm?
If you ain't got my money, I'm killing you and him. You done dragged me into this?
I'm used to stealing. Get in, get out.
Here come Debo. Give me your stuff.
You want me to ask for my bike back?
What bike?
The one I let you use a couple of weeks ago. Oh, that bike.
Damn!
Count out my money.
40, 60, 80, 120, 140.
I don't think you're applying yourself, Smokey.
Wow.
Lord have mercy.
Just give me 3.5 minutes. Maybe even 4. Hey, who is that?
Oh, no.
Drive by!
What's going on?
I don't know. It sounds like machine guns.
So you gonna loan me the money or not?
I wouldn't feel comfortable lending you $200 without a job.
If I was working, I wouldn't need $200.
Exactly.
Now, Dana told me about that big snake situation.
Big worm.
Big worm, big hole, big... I don't give a damn!
¿Y qué te monotto? Me decime que me meto más de esto.
I said the hip, to the hip.
I'm gonna kill you and Smokey.
You need a job.
You need a wig.
Damn! What you hooking me up with that girl for? Talking about she look like Janet Jackson. Control. Got out the car looking more like Freddie Jackson.
Oh, my back, my neck! I'm suing y'all!
I want 150,000, but I'll set out of court right now for $20.
Ice Cube, Chris Tucker, Bernie Mac, Johnny Witherspoon, Tiny Zeus Lister, and Mia Long. Friday.
Don't ever come by here. Okay?
I said the hip, to the hip hop. You don't stop the rocker to the bang bang boogie. Say up jump the boogie to the rhythm of the boogie to beat.
Directed by F. Gary Gray.
Craig Jones, recently fired and unemployed, spends Friday with his best friend Smokey, a small-time drug peddler. The pair smoke a brokered consignment of marijuana, which Smokey was tasked to sell for Big Worm. Big Worm attempts to collect his money from Smokey, who inadvertently incriminates Craig, subjecting both to Big Worm's ultimatum. Pay $200 no later than 10 p.m. that night, or else Craig and Smokey will be killed.
Okay, so I've complained a lot recently about plots being paper thin. And I think the plot of this movie is maybe could be grouped in there if we were watching a lesser movie, because this plot's fairly straightforward. It's fairly typical. Like, we've seen this 1,000 times before. And I think it may have been a groan fest if it hadn't have been a movie that was done where the comedy was done as well as it is here. But I think the main reason for that is one person, and that is Chris fucking Tucker. Like, this guy is gold from the first moment he's on screen, from the first moment he opens his mouth. He's amazing. And there was recently this list that I was reading online, and it was like, okay movies, but like there was one person who saved it, and they had Tucker listed for this one and for The Fifth Element, because he's so charismatic, and it's true here. And then the other thing too is I think you got your supporting characters here that really help, because they're fucking nuts. They make sense in some weird way. And so because of all that, I don't care how overplayed aspects of this plot is. The cast is good, and I think that's why we all three of us, I mean, we talked about it in the opening, why all of us wind up coming back to watch this one like again and again and again.
We just listened to the trailer, and you can hear it's like 80% Chris Tucker, because he's pretty much the only funny thing about this movie. I think you're being a bit generous with the supporting cast, though. There were a lot of stale throwaway performances. I think Regina King, who we know from Watchmen as Dana, Mrs. Jones, DJ Pooh as Red. This movie only made about a quarter of the characters feel interesting. I liked Big Worm. I liked Craig. I liked Smokey. But there was a lot of people who didn't really need to be there.
Oh, no, come on. I'm going to take on both of you there. The supporting cast was dynamite. I thought they were all great. You have, of course, Debo. You have Mrs. Jones, the mother, is great. You have Hector. You have little Chris. You got Mr. Parker across the street. They're all good. And the paper thin plot, yes, it is paper thin. But Gene, I have to tell you, your magic with words is a beautiful thing. The way you described it. The pair smoke a brokered consignment of marijuana, which Smokey was tasked to sell for Big Worm. Do you think that's how they went in and sold the film? Do you think that's what Ice Cube said to get this movie made?
Thanks, Wikipedia. Big D, when we're talking about your memories of the movie and not being able to relate necessarily because you hadn't smoked pot before, and Ash, you and I had our wonderful experience with Lovecraft Country. A few minutes into Friday, Chris Tucker, he calls Big Worm a Florida Evans looking motherfucker. And I was like, I'm only going to understand about 70% of what I'm about to see. I knew from the start that not being black was going to handicap my full appreciation of this movie. And this isn't just a black thing. I want to clarify that. I'm sure my life experiences as an Iranian American who didn't even step foot into a white household until I was like basically in junior high school prevent me from fully enjoying movies like Home Alone or A Christmas Story. Like, if you haven't lived a specific type of life, whether that's being Midwestern and white and upper class, or whether it's being black in South Central, you're going to miss some of the jokes and some of that sense of familiarity. And so, yeah, I looked up Florida Evans and I'm like, oh shit, okay, that was the lady from Good Times. And then the joke is fucking hilarious because, yeah, Big Worm looks exactly like Esther Roll, but it's not a joke that immediately hits at my core. And I was just like, God knows how many jokes I'm going to miss throughout this movie. Is the layout of the house something that's familiar to black people or people from South Central? They go, oh shit, that's funny. Or things that are on the shelf in the house, people's clothing, like little gestures. And so I want to start that out as a caveat with this movie that I might not have gotten anything that might influence my score a bit. And I apologize ahead of time.
You said that Ice Cube wanted to make this movie because everything that we'd seen on film about the hood was always death and gloom and despair. And he wanted to show how comedy was a way of survival. And now watching this so many years later, and as all the people that I've met on my close to 50 years on this planet, it just rings so true to me that these characters, even though they're specific to LA and specific to this African-American community, everybody's got those friends. Everybody's got the scammer. Everybody's got the one who's cheating. Everyone's got the pastor or the reverend who's out there. In this movie, it felt to me like an African-American version of The Burbs, where you get to see the whole like town in the street unfold in front of you.
You had me until everybody's got the pastor and the reverend with them. Like,
I do.
I was there. I was like, yeah, I got the friends. Yeah, I know people who cheat. Everybody's got that pastor and reverend in their life. Like, no.
You don't have the reverend or the priest who's out there who you know is preaching, but you know the dirt on him, that he's actually not a good dude?
Nah.
No.
Really?
No.
No.
Oh, come on. In Texas? Are you kidding me?
I did not fucking grow up in Texas. How many times do we have to go through
I get
this?
them reversed.
Yeah, everyone knows New Orleans is a city devoid of any sort of religion.
None.
Yeah, but like, I mean, it wasn't like we were hanging out with a local priest.
I'd love to see what those priests do in Mardi Gras, but
They party.
the little side characters aside, we got to focus on the big characters that work. And for me, the best is Craig's father. It's played by the legendary John Witherspoon. He's sitting on the toilet and he calls Craig's in, and it's normal. It's toilet humor. You get the audible plops and grunts that you really pick up on when you have subtitles on. And normally I'd say this scene is nothing more than just stupid potty humor. But as a parent, it just clicked with me. Hey, you know what? When he says, Craig, get in here. He says, I smelled your shit for 22 years. You can smell mine for 5 minutes. It rings so true. But I don't know, is it a cultural thing? The bath scene in Lethal Weapon with the sexy sax, and Danny Glover calls the whole family in to his bath without bubbles. And they're in there and they're talking. Is this something that happens in non-white families?
Is this what black people are really like? I don't know. But Iranians, I can speak to the Iranian experience. We are a curiously private people when it comes to bodily functions. We don't burp around each other. We don't fart around one another, and we certainly do not ever acknowledge that we shit or pee. Like, I didn't know what the aftaba was until I was like 9 years old. There was just watering can in the bathroom, and I just thought it was for watering plants. No one even taught me to wash my own ass. That's how averse we are to anything bathroom related.
I think I'll pretty much like pee in front of anyone. Like, I'm not like pee shy. And I don't ever really shower alone. I miss showering alone. That's a thing, right? I don't think I'd have a problem with my kids coming in while I was in the bathtub, although I think baths are disgusting just inherently.
You wish you could shower alone? Can't you just tell people, stay out of the shower?
Yeah, get away. Or do it in secret.
No, I have fucking children.
Right, but tell them this is a mom shower. You don't get to come in right now.
If I keep them out, I get notes under the door like, Mommy, do you still love me?
Set boundaries.
Yeah, well.
You tell them they can't come in.
It's fine.
What about this? Would either of you be okay with your partner dropping a deuce with you in the room?
No. Blech.
I'm 100% okay with Sarah shitting in front of me. That's fine, but I could not shit in front of her. No way.
Ugh, I don't know. I think that is something that just,
No.
Too much.
I'm still pretty sure that Sarah just like shits protein bars.
They're probably hard, like little pellets. They probably don't smell very much.
What is she, a reindeer?
No, like a rabbit. I think she eats a very healthy diet of a lot of a lot of grains, a lot of organic material.
Yeah, beer. It's grains and organic material.
And hops.
No, she eats like organ meat and beer.
I still think she would poop kind of solid and something kind of cute. I don't picture man shit. But something I touched on earlier on here, this movie is nostalgic, and I found myself old man on the porch screaming at kids, missing the 90s. There was no cell phones. There was no social media. If you wanted to meet up with your friends, kids, I'm going to tell you what you had to do. You had to get off your ass and physically go find your friends. There was no, hey, let's get on the phone and set a time. So there was usually one phone in a house, and you would call that house, and you had to get through the mother, the sister, the father, the grandmother, whoever it was. So you became close friends with that entire family. You got to know them on a deeper level and made a connection. Today, yeah, people have all these, I have so many followers, but how many of them do you know the parents? How many of them do you know? How many kids out there knew what Star 69 was?
Who are you explaining this to? All of our listeners are like 50 years old. There's no 20-year-old listening to this podcast like, what? What a shocker. We'll put a poll up on Twitter, a Twitter poll, and see how old our audience is. And no one will answer it because they're too old to be on Twitter. And people say this whole like, we got to slow life down and sit on the porch. Like we don't have fucking options. You can still call people. You can still stroll over to somebody's house. We don't do it. And you know why? It's because it comes with responsibility and effort. My tiny joy right now is unfollowing people on social media and limiting my view of the world to truly interesting people, Shat listeners, and people who have actually hung out with in the past 6 months. And it's rad. The reason why people aren't going to the porch, when you're online and you're texting, and if that person's like not entertaining or annoying, be gone, right? What we're afraid of is going on the porch and sitting next to somebody, and then you're like, oh, fuck. Now how do I get out of here?
I don't know. I think this is a cultural thing because, like, in New Orleans, like, this still happens. Like, people still sit on their fucking porches in New Orleans. But that being said, I do think, Big D, you have a small bit of a point here because we do have options.
Thank you.
But we aren't forced into it anymore. That's the difference, is that like we have the option not to be forced into it. And so there's this really interesting study that came out that I was reading the other day about how technology has like rewired children's brains. And so children are no longer able to have like the metacognitive skills to like infer through text. Like, I mean, like a book. They literally can infer on a level in media with like videos and things like that like our generation could with words, because they don't ever have to like interact with text, and they don't ever have to sit and interact with like long form conversations anymore. And so that's the problem, is we're not forced to do it. And because we're not forced to do it, because we're not sitting there smoking weed on our front porch, it's rewiring everybody's brains, and kids are getting fucking dumb.
So, Jane, I want to take issue with one thing. Yes, everybody has options. But today, no one is in the moment.
Oh my God.
Everyone is I'm telling you, go to a restaurant.
Like such an old man. Nobody's
Everyone
in
has the phone out. Ash, you know what? You've sent us photos that I know you've taken 20 photos. I know you haven't been enjoying the recital, that you've been like, okay, photo.
No, I don't do that.
Wait. Taking a photo has changed.
No.
I guarantee you in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, people were still taking photos of things.
My dad followed us around with that giant brick of a video camera on his shoulder.
Your dad followed strangers around with a video camera.
I'm saying, everybody out there, if you go out to dinner with your loved ones, put the phone in your pocket and try not to touch it. Listen to me.
My God.
I wasn't going to talk about this. I went to the movies last Thursday with Roger Roper. We went to see The Batman. That son of a bitch could not put his phone down.
Of course not.
I told him, I said, Roger, if you pick your phone up again, I'm going to hit you. So then he started scrolling through his notifications on his watch. I said, Roger, you're going to get a soda on your head from people behind us. He kept doing it and kept doing it. I will never see a movie with him again.
I don't know why you went in the first place.
Like, I could tell you, like, quite honestly, the majority of the people that I hang out with would call me out if I pulled my phone out. And not that I want to, but they would. If I'm at a hash, I'm getting called out. If I pull it out at the gym, that would be fucking weird. Can't do it on motorcycle rides. When Sarah and I are hanging out, touching a butt and grabbing a titty is way more fun than being on your phone. And also there's dogs around. I don't like the phone. It's a small screen. It's shitty to type on. It's not my thing. But I imagine we're having the same conversation that, like, first of all, that they had it on the planet Abydos and Stargate, but also like just in general, like when writing came along, they're like, this is going to ruin everything. No one's going to remember stories anymore.
That jitterbug, it's going to make those kids promiscuous and everyone's going to be having sex.
And they did. That's how the baby boomers happened.
I'm right.
Fucking jitterbug. Well, Craig attempts to borrow money from a number of people, including his mother, Betty, and his irritable girlfriend, Joy, who thinks Craig is being unfaithful with Felicia, a local drug addict. Craig grabs a gun to walk Smokey home, but his father, Willie, tells him that he needs to use his hands instead of weapons to resolve his problems. Smokey sells some drugs to Hector, a former smoking buddy, while Debo, the neighborhood bully, forces Smokey to break into their neighbor Stanley's house and steal $200, which Debo keeps for himself.
There's a lot of movies out there that show what it's like to get high. And some are specifically like high on weed, right? And some are dumb, like the movie How High. It's a fucking dumb movie. And others are pretty incredible. I think Half Baked is an amazing movie. I think Pineapple Express, especially the opening scene with Bill Hader where, he starts singing jazz music. Like, it's amazing. But none of those, I think, can hold a candle to this one or would even like potentially exist without this movie. Like, this is your consummate getting high film. And we've talked before, Gene, about like how Requiem made you like afraid of heroin. You're like, you know what? Heroin, not a good idea. Also, Kids made me afraid of drugs growing up, right? But this one, it was such a perfect mix of like getting high and like a neighborhood film that, like you, Big D, I'd never smoked weed before I saw this movie, but I fucking wanted to after this film because I was like, oh, like pot's cool.
I think in here, pot is more of a plot device than like a supporting role. In Pineapple Express, it's all about pot. In Half Baked, it's all about pot. Here, yes, Smokey, they get high. They can really get high once. And then, yes, they owe the money back to Big Worm, but it's more that the pot makes the rest of the plot go. I don't think it's the same as those other films.
Wait, are you saying it's a cautionary tale?
No. I'm just saying that.
Okay.
I'm just saying that because they owed the money, the hijinks ensue, the craziness in town. It's not like they were high the whole time, being like, "Whoa, look at everybody! Oh, the trails." It wasn't like that. Here, it was more something that made the other things happen. So they sit on the porch that one time that Craig gets high and he starts hearing the phone ringing inside the house. And it reminded me, and now I don't know if I've talked about this before because we've done now 270 movies. So I start to forget and starting to blur with what I've talked about before. But there was one night at Blockbuster. This was after high school. I still had not smoked. And one of my coworkers on a busy Friday, and we were at the busiest store in Westchester County. This store, was always packed, wall to wall. It was a bigger store. And he said, let's go out in the parking lot and smoke. I said, okay, this can't be too bad. Let's go out and try it. I came back in now, and I swear, for the next 4 hours, I felt that every single person around me was asking me questions. So I would turn to a customer and be like, oh, what'd you say? What movie are you looking for? Oh, nobody had asked me absolutely anything. It was so bad that the manager put me in the back row to start restocking tapes until I sobered up. I could never smoke weed again at work and never get high.
Yeah, I think we might be a podcast full of people who just aren't really good on weed. My first time smoking weed with my cousin, we were watching the Super Bowl at his house. He asked me if I wanted to go get food. I was curled up on the couch, just wanting to fucking fall asleep and wake up and not be high anymore. I said, yeah, food sounded good. He took me to my mom's house and she opened the door and I was like, fuck, she fucking knows. She fucking knows. I went and locked myself in my room and tried so hard to just fall asleep and the room was spinning and I hated it. Of course, not learning my lesson this time around, Sarah's like, hey, it'd be really cool for Friday. You should fucking eat an edible and then watch the movie. So I looked in the fridge and I had a year-old gummy from the King Bee. And I forgot that the gummies were 10 milligrams. So I was only supposed to eat half. I ate the whole thing. As the movie started fucking with Craig, it started fucking with me. The worst part was when the audio was behind the video. And then it got even worse where I could see the soundstage that stood in for Craig's front porch, which is a problem because it wasn't a soundstage. That's an actual house.
Yeah, I'm a really fun drunk, but I am not fun high, at all. It has the opposite effect on me that I think it's supposed to have. It makes me so fucking paranoid. I get so anxious. I have rolling panic attacks when I'm on it. And you'd think I'd be smart enough to stop trying to like it. But I have all of these different experiences where it's the same thing over and over and over again. There was this one time where we smoked and we were watching Arrested Development. It was one of the episodes where Job is in the banana suit. And I was so freaked the fuck out by that. And I wound up crying in a corner. And then I also throw up a lot when I don't ever throw up when I'm drunk. Ever. I can hold my liquor like a fucking Scottish dude. But weed, give me a little bit of an edible or give me a little bit of a joint and I'm puking my guts up everywhere. So I suck.
So just in case we do have listeners out there who are under 30, like Gene has said, we don't. Enjoy doing drugs while you're carefree. Because as you become an adult and as you have kids and you have responsibilities, I found that I become more paranoid and I become now afraid to where I used to do crazy stuff that today I couldn't even dream of.
I don't have kids, so I can't really speak to that. But for me, it's just weed specific. I'll do other drugs, I'm just fine. It's just the weed. Even when I've done mushrooms, the dogs, they seem to understand that I'm on mushrooms, and they're just like, all right, Like, we're just going to avoid him right now. And to everybody listening out there, by the way, the King Bee also has never even done a drug. So we're strictly a booze household here at Shat the Movies.
I'm proud of it.
I may have been selling this wrong. I had plenty of great pot experiences. Great ones for years of great pot experiences, years of great mushrooms experiences. Just that first time at work was a bad one. Other than that, yeah, if it becomes legal in Florida, Vanessa and I might have to have a conversation. But yeah, I've had good ones.
So at ShatCon, or if you ever come back and visit Arizona, are we doing mushrooms?
Again, right away, my like little, I don't know about that. Like my
what's ever gone wrong on mushrooms? Nothing. Nothing ever.
Yeah, with your arsenal, we will end up out in the desert and shooting at something.
Yeah, there was a summer where I was just carrying around, like literally all summer, just mushrooms in my underwear all the time, just for whenever I needed them. And it was
good summer.
When we did Men in Tights, Big D talked about how we needed a straight man in an over-the-top comedy. Ice Cube is that guy. Like Chris Tucker, yeah, he's great. John Witherspoon, yeah, he's great. But they're clownish. They're over the top. They're something to be laughed at. Craig, on the other hand, he has Ice Cube's like trademark NWA scowl. He's got that South Central cadence. And even when he's high and he pushes a little more toward comedy, or like when he's smiling a little bit around Debbie, he's not hamming it up. And I love that about Ice Cube, at least in this era of Ice Cube. He understood what he was doing in a comedy. He understood his role, but he never got super goofy.
Yeah, well, and there's this kind of comedy that exists because he's the only one who legit looks like he comes from this world, right? He makes the others look like the actors and like kind of caricatures that they are, because the other ones don't. There's nothing frightening about them. Even like Big Worm, like he looks like a fucking tool. Like he looks like an idiot, and there's a comedy in that. And I think that Cube the whole time, he looks like an extra from like Boys in the Hood. Like he didn't get cast in that. And so he's like trying to live that moment here because he looks like himself. And I think it's funny to watch him like sitting like, next to or like across from like a Chris Tucker who like clearly did not grow up in South Central. At least I assume he did. And if he did, he doesn't look like he fucking did in this role.
So, Ash, you were correct. Chris Tucker did not grow up in South Central. He grew up in Atlanta, Georgia. I don't know, the conditions, but I do find it funny, okay? Going back and thinking here, okay? I grew up with NWA when there was the big outcry, when it was the fuck the police, when it was they were like the worst thing possible. I find it so funny that today they've become so corporate. Dr. Dre is a billionaire selling beats to Apple. You get Ice Cube who's doing family comedies like Are We There Yet? Or Are We Done Yet? What has happened to the world? Ice-T
has an incredible outlook on it where he says, I'm a hustler. And that's what everybody in NWA was, a hustler. It's get the money. And whatever you got to do that. And so, in this sense, they've never been untrue to the hustle, whether you're doing dumb family comedies or whatever, or doing, Law and Order. Like, it's all about the hustle, just whatever you got to do to make that dollar. I think it's fucking awesome.
They're also not like 18 to 22 anymore, right? Like, they're not like kids anymore, and they're fucking mega millionaires because of all the money that they fucking made. So,
right. But I'm saying, how do you make that transition? How do you become the establishment? How do you make, that's a good pivot. Like Gene said, the way you said it there, the hustle, chasing the hustle. But a lot of times it doesn't work this well.
Are we calling Dr. Dre the establishment?
Now he is. He's a tech giant. Are you kidding me?
I just still am reeling from your statement of, I grew up on the NWA.
And the fuck the police.
It's all right. When you get on your porch and you put your phone away and live in the moment.
I said the NWA?
And the motherfuck the police.
Shut up. I meant with like the NWA craze. Like I'm saying like the NWA.
Yeah, but you didn't say that. You said, I grew up with those NWA boys. And
putting the craze on the end of something only makes you sound older, by the way. Check it out. Jitterbug craze.
It was controversial.
It might be my medication. Just leave me alone. I'm getting dehydrated.
So the movie has about like three major themes. It's the hangouts, it's the weed, and then there's the horniness. And this is probably my favorite part of the movie. It's just how fucking horny Smokey is in this movie, how Chris Tucker makes it so funny.
What the fuck happened to Chris Tucker? I would have thought he would have stayed like this massive celebrity. Does anybody know what he's doing other than that like weird like cameo role in Silver Linings Playbook?
Well, I know why he wasn't on next Friday. King B was listening to an interview with John Witherspoon, and he was like, yeah, Chris Tucker wasn't going to do next Friday because he was making, quote, that Jackie Chan money.
I want to call bullshit. There's no way he didn't knock the dust off the pussy of that Freddie Jackson looking girl.
I agree with you there. We would have been robbed of the amazing, like, never, ever, 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 ever. Like, that's a fucking great scene, right? Come back here again. But yeah, totally agree. I know this guy. My cousin is this guy. And when we were teenagers, oh my God, he would fuck anything. He wouldn't let you know he was doing it. And maybe that's Smokey's game, right? He tells her, never come around here again. Then he's going to get in touch with her later when nobody's around.
True.
Well, Smokey attempts to retrieve the money from Debo, who is asleep with Felicia at her house, but he's foiled by Ezel, a petty thief. Seeing Debo awake, Craig and Smokey notice a car driving slowly and, suspecting a drive-by shooting, hide in Craig's room for the evening. And with 10 p.m. approaching, they return outside but are forced to evade Big Worm's men as they're sitting in a black van with its headlights off, starting a shootout. So I was entertained by Friday, but I really wish it had been shot as a straightforward film that just hangs out with Craig and Smokey as they do normal shit on the porch in the neighborhood. I agree with you, Big D. That's where this movie hinges. They're strong enough characters on their own. And I would just like to see them do a normal day and kind of the little things that happen between them, the conversations, the people they encounter. That's when this movie is at its best. But instead, Ice Cube and DJ Pooh, they tried their hand at sketch comedy. And that's where the movie gets corny. Like, I could almost feel chapter headings on the script, you know? Convenience store skit, Smokey has to shit skit, the bicycle skit, burglarizing Debo skit. And every time one of these detours came on, it just didn't deliver.
I completely disagree. I think some of these are the most amazing parts of the film. And the one that I always remember the most is him shitting on the side of that house and him coming up and seeing Smokey shitting there. And he's like, go away!
Smokey! What you doing over there, Smokey?
Like, I've seen this scene, I mean, probably 70 times, I feel like. And I still laughed my ass off when rewatching it for this podcast because it's fucking hilarious. I think some of these work better than others, but they're good. Like, I like those parts of this movie.
Gene, the movie's 90 minutes. Do you want a 24-minute short? Is this a PSA? Is this like an after-school special? Those skits make up a majority of the film. Okay, they're sitting on the porch for really very little. You need them going around. Debo, he works. It's become like the Bye Felicia. Debo will live on after every actor in this film is gone. Michael Clarke Duncan playing Craps is his first movie. It's great. The way that Red, when he gets knocked out by Debo and he just runs back to his car, like crying, dragging his arms, or the sound of the bike that sounds like Jaws. All this shit works, but without it, you have no structure of a movie.
I'm not saying they don't run into Debo. I'm saying that you don't need to have a skit, like a flashback skit of that scene, right? That's my point. It's so inorganic. I mean, there's literally the transition to the Smokey shitting scene is Smokey going, hey, I'll be right back. I go to the bathroom. And then he runs through the neighborhood trying to find a place to shit. It's just so inorganic. And there are plenty of movies that just follow people during the course of a normal day that aren't skit based. Kids.
Oh,
Kids was great.
Oh my God. Yeah, the roaring, ripping good time that Kids was compared to this one.
All right. Bernie Mac. Okay. Bernie Mac, one of the funniest comedians of our lifetimes. It's crazy to think that he's been dead 14 years. But for you kids out there listening, if you missed Bernie Mac in his prime, check out his work on the original Kings of Comedy or Bad Santa or The Bernie Mac Show. Note that, and then note what he did with this like preacher character in Friday. It's terrible. Knowing what Bernie Mac is capable of and then seeing what they did with him, it's a testament to the fact that Ice Cube and DJ Pooh were not seasoned enough writers to work with top-notch comedians. It also highlights, Big D, to your point, how fucking good John Witherspoon is, because he made some really weak material very, very funny.
I'm just shocked. When they're talking about the drive-by, I fully expected Big Worm was going to be all talk. He was going to be bullshit. He was going to be like the Stookie brothers in White Men Can't Jump. they were going to take a fake Polaroid or something. There's no way that they're going to try to kill them like Boys in the Hood style for $200. But yep, they actually do it. They go full blown drive-by Uzi shooting. They even put Craig in the exact wardrobe that Doughboy wore in Boys in the Hood in the opening. It's how did this family not loan him $200? Did they not think he was in danger? It just seemed weird.
I was in a drive-by once, and I was too fat to wedge behind a brick wall. Never thought to go up on the roof. That would have been the go-to move. I wish I had seen this movie before. So note to self, go up on the roof, apparently. Don't try to get behind the wall.
I'm sorry. When were you in a drive-by shooting?
Las Locos? Was it Las Locos?
Yeah, LVL. It was LVL, yeah. So that was 1989 or 90.
So you were like 10 years old.
Yeah. No, they weren't trying to kill. I was at the Target. It's not like I owed Big Worm money or anything. I just happened to be playing outside.
Yeah. That was put on consignment. His consignment stash for Big Worm.
Yeah, his consignment stash. No, I was just hanging out in the neighborhood at the time, and a shooting occurred.
Did anybody get hit?
I got hit.
No, you got hit where? Bullshit.
In my leg.
You got shot?
You don't know this story?
No.
Wait, I'm sorry. Wait, you got shot?
How have we not gone over this story before?
Hold on. You said you were involved in a drive-by. You didn't say you actually got fucking shot.
I know.
Yeah. Hey, why are you burying the lead? Come on, reporter boy. Put that fucking
I wasn't
front.
I wasn't like mortally wounded or anything.
Show the scar.
You want to see it right now?
Yes.
All right, hold on.
I think you might have been the target. You probably did something wrong.
How do you guys want me to show you? Just on the screen. All right.
Stand on the
yes,
table.
If you can. I think it's going to be in like the meaty part of his thigh. I think it's going to be a grazing shot. That's probably why you're not in the fucking newspaper business anymore.
Why?
You buried the lead. The lead is you got shot in a drive-by.
Fuck.
It wasn't like bad.
Did you bleed?
Well, yeah, I bled, but it wasn't like the bullet wasn't lodged in me or anything.
Oh, so it's not really. It was a pellet gun. We're hearing the true story.
It was
now.
a BB gun.
Yes, it was Lavatos Locos with a pellet gun hit Gene in the thigh. It left a welt, which dripped a little blood. I'm waving my bullshit flag full here.
There you go. There's the photo.
Okay, it looks, besides being extra hairy, that's a legit wound.
That's a legit wound.
Wow, you could braid that hair. Look at that. That's majestic.
Well, I didn't know I was going to be on camera today. I would have shaved.
Yeah, it's a decent shot. I'm surprised you didn't bleed out a little bit, or maybe you got lucky.
Bleed out? It was like a 22.
Yeah, but you could have hit an artery or something.
God, I know this is going to be the show-stopping information that it was.
It is. You got fucking shot, dude.
Neighbors come out of their houses upon hearing the gunshots. Debbie confronts Debo for assaulting Felicia, assuming Felicia was behind Smokey's attempted theft. Debo knocks Craig's neighbor Debbie to the ground with a single punch, and Craig knocks Debo out as retaliation, allowing Smokey to get the money. Other locals retrieve their items. Debbie tends to Craig's wounds, leading him to break up with Joy on the phone, while his father informs him that his former supervisor called, wanting him in the following day.
Until I went back and researched, I forgot how, and I don't want to say like the hood movies, because you guys are going to fucking shit on me. Like I said, the NWA. This genre of films that focused on inner city violence, I didn't remember how big of a deal it was and how much money it was making back in the 90s. I love Menace to Society. We have it coming up on our schedule. That made like 28 million in theaters. You had Boys in the Hood earned 58 million. It was also nominated for an Oscar. And Ice Cube has said this was a response that he wanted to show. And it worked for me because I think as a kid growing up in suburban New York, I could see what they were doing, and it made me look at those other films in the genre in a different way.
New Orleans before Katrina was not a gentrified city at all. And so like New Orleans was like one street would be like $1 million homes, and then the next street would be where like public housing was. And so like growing up in New Orleans, things were really different than that. And like the best parts of the city are the parts that people consider quote unquote dangerous, right? The parts of the city that have the best culture, that have the kindest people, that have the warmest people. And so when I watch this, I have no experience in South Central LA, but I've got lots of experience like in Tremé or in like Gentilly Woods. And those parts of town now, like a lot of people who look like me, they don't go there because they're like, ooh, this is the quote unquote hood. And it's not. Like, those are the best parts where the best culture of our city come from. So I don't know. I can't really relate in that way, but I think that Ice Cube had a really good point with this, which is that if you only show the shit, because like you mentioned all those movies, the ones that always pops in my head is do you guys ever see that film Set It Off with Jada Pinkett Smith and Queen Latifah? Nope. Where Queen Latifah, spoiler alert, gets killed like gangsta style outside of her big old car.
Is that what sets it off?
I thought Set It Off was gonna be like a dance movie. I was ready for you to tell us it was like Step It Up or something.
No. Okay. But that movie is so dark and it's so gritty. And I'm not saying that those movies don't have a place, because clearly they do. I think Boys in the Hood is a phenomenal film. I wish we could review that on the pod. I think it's brilliant. I think it's amazing. But it has a different purpose. It has a message. And this, I think, has a similar message, which is just like, not all parts of their life is like that. Cuba Gooding Jr. is not watching Ricky get shot every day.
I got to agree. Listeners, go to very dangerous places. It's where you get to see the true culture. I remember going to Rio the first time to see a friend of ours. When we got out of the airport, I had to lay down in the backseat of the car because if they saw us driving into this area, we probably would have gotten robbed. But we got in that night, spent a couple of days. It's an area that now, like, everybody's like, how did you go there? And it was great. In Brazil, like, you don't always have the most money, but depression almost doesn't exist. People find a way to survive, Gene. And I think that's something that we overlook all the time.
I think go to the cool places, even if they're dangerous, but don't necessarily go to dangerous places just because they're dangerous. Whenever I go to Mexico, the 2 times that I've been, everyone's like, oh, you gotta go outside the resorts. You gotta go see what real life is like in Mexico. Like, get away from those tourist areas and go to real Mexico. So I tried out real Mexico. I went to San Felipe, and then I also tried out resort Mexico. I went to Cancun, and I'm going to say I like Cancun. Because when I was going to San Felipe, I had to go through military checkpoints. It scared the shit out of me. I had to go through about 3 hours of desert where there was no services at all. It scared the shit out of me. And then I got to San Felipe, and life was pretty much like it's like in San Diego, except slightly less expensive. But Ash, I'll agree with you on the New Orleans thing. There's so many parts of New Orleans that are absolutely boring at this point because they've been so gentrified. New York City, I think, is a great example. Big D, you and I talk about that all the time. Times Square used to be something interesting. Now it has a Home Depot and a Bubba Gump shrimp company. So,
boo.
Getting back to the movie culminates in this fight scene between Debo and Craig. And I think Ice Cube was trying to look tough here, or like trying to like bring some of his like street cred to the movie. And I am convinced that the absolute ridicule Ice Cube must have received after attempting this fight scene with Tiny Lister, rest in peace, pushed Ice Cube into giving up on being gangster at all, and then diving headlong into Big D, those aforementioned stupid ass movies like Are We There Yet and Fist Fight. This might be the worst fight scene we've seen on Shat the Movies. It's so bad, and it takes itself so seriously. And it was just a terrible way to end an otherwise enjoyable movie.
So I was really proud of myself because that I will never forget, like on Westworld, where I'm like, Gene, wasn't the action amazing? And you're like, it was fucking awful. And then you walk down and you break through the scene, and I'm like, oh, like you're right, it was bad. And this one I noticed from the outset. I knew that you would hate it. And I knew why, because it looks ridiculous. He's so fucking slow. He's like
so slow.
He's like lumbering. Like, I have never been in a physical altercation with another person, but I feel like I would fight better than fucking Ice Cube does here. And more than that, like, the dude is huge. Like, no way he falls out from that little love tap that he gives him. Ridiculous.
No, but he fights like kids fight. Kids, Gene, like they slap their arms. It's like, it's like uncoordinated. Their whole body gets into it. It's kind of like, But what got me was the family just standing there, right? And,
yeah.
At this point, we've already had the Mr. Jones conversation. A gun's not what makes you a man. It's the fists. The dad didn't say pick up a brick and beat his head open on the road.
Yeah.
Guess what, Mr. Jones? Tell your son not to kill someone. It's not the gun. It's the splitting fucking Debo's head open with a piece of masonry. They'll both end up in the same place behind bars.
On that note, now's the time we give our wipe score for Friday. The wipe score is our way of telling you how many wipes this movie would take to get a respective. But 0 wipes is smoking a J with your good friends, Big D and Ash on the porch. And 5 wipes is an absolute disaster movie. It is the vomiting that occurs afterward. Ash, we'll start with you. How many wipes do you give for Friday?
So I think this movie is so much fun. I do think it's aged some. It isn't as fresh as it used to be. I didn't laugh as much this time as I have previously. And it's not because I'm older, and I don't think it's because I've seen it so many times. I think it doesn't feel as funny and as original as I think I quite remembered it. But it's an absolute classic. Chris Tucker alone, watching him in this movie, young Chris Tucker, like before he really, really blew up, he's amazing. Clearly, this is part of the reason why he got those movies with Jackie Chan, the Rush Hour films, because he shows he's a star. He shows he can carry something. I think this movie is a lot better than average. I was going to give it 2 wipes, but in listening to Big D and remembering it, I'm actually going to back down some from that because I do think I enjoyed it more than 2 wipes. So I'm going to call a little bit of an audible here, and I'm going to go with 1.5.
Yes.
I think it's no surprise that I'm going to be the anchor on this pod. I'm coming in at 2 wipes, and here's my reason. Jokes don't have to be smart, but they shouldn't be cheap. And Friday is so predictable in its humor. It feels like a teenager wrote it. And that makes sense, right? It's like it's a first movie for 2 writers. It's their first stab at it, and they're not going to be perfect. But these cheap gags, they wear thin. Asian store owner, make a gong noise. Hot lady neighbor looking to get laid. Of course, her husband's got to be a little person. Smokey got too high smoking with Hector. Of course, it was just angel dust. And it reminds me of when Big D apparently is very amused by this, but it reminds me of when you hear a joke with a punchline so lame that you don't realize that was the punchline. That's what I kept experiencing with Friday, where I expected the joke to go somewhere, but that was the joke. So for me, little under you, Ash, better than average, but it's only 2 wipes.
Hold on. What I'm laughing at is you go back and you say, it was predictable. Hot neighbor lady? Of course, little person's the husband. How was that obvious?
Because you know that her husband was going to have some obvious, like, no pun intended, shortcoming, right? It was going to be a fat guy, a little person, a blind man, something like that.
I thought it was going to be the nerdy neighbor, the one who's like, could you stay off the grass? I thought that was the husband.
Same thing.
But listen, okay. We have to remember the fact that this movie was made is a small miracle. That the studio didn't have any faith in it. They didn't have any faith in DJ Pooh or Ice Cube or the plot, or they wanted somebody who had some appeal in Chris Tucker. And it was something that was trying to do something new. It's relevant today. You say bye, Felicia. People know this movie. You show Debo, people know this movie. It has lived on longer and it is funnier. You know what? Yes, there's a drive-by. Yes, Debo is almost beaten to death. And yeah, it still was a feel-good comedy that I remember the fun of the 90s. I really enjoyed it. It's a 1.25.
I think what you're saying, though, is that the studio was right. They're like, we're looking at this script and we're thinking, we're not doing this unless you get a veteran comedian. They're like, all right, cool, Chris Tucker. They're like, great. And who ended up carrying the movie? Chris fucking Tucker.
Yeah, I'm voting on the movie. But I'm saying the fact that it got made and it worked out. Now, I don't know how much of that is by accident or was by design, but the end product, it was as enjoyable today. It was 1.25 for me.
All right, with 1.25 wipes from Big D, 1.5 wipes from Ash, and 2 wipes from me, that gives us an average wipe score of 1.583 repeating wipes for Friday.
So, Gene, with a score of 1.583 repeating wipes, that now ties it in the 90 spot with Clue, Leon the Professional, and Risky Business. It is slightly better than Gremlins, and it is slightly worse than Stand By Me.
Clue is a million times funnier than this movie.
Clue's bad.
Much.
Clue's pretty bad. Clue's pretty bad.
I still don't understand how you think that.
Granted, I was pissed at Roger again for that reporting. I just didn't like the repetitive nature of it. I didn't think it was that good.
All right, Big D, what's coming up next week?
So, Gene, next week is going to be a terrifying event in Shat the Movie's history. After returning home from the Vietnam War, veteran Jacob Singer struggles to maintain his sanity. Plagued by hallucinations and flashbacks, Singer rapidly falls apart as the world and people around him morph and twist into disturbing images. His girlfriend Jezebel and ex-wife Sarah try to help, but to no avail. Even Singer's chiropractor friend Louis fails to reach him as he descends into madness. Commissioned by one of our wonderful benefactors, Carmelita, came out in November of 1990. Man, I remember leaving the theater terrified after this film.
Love this movie.
The twist, Jacob's just dehydrated.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Carmelita, for commissioning our upcoming movie, and thank you, Braylon, for commissioning Friday. That concludes this week's episode of Shat the Movies. Be sure to follow us on social media and share with a friend. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram at Shat the Movies. You can email us, host@shatthemovies.com. Support the podcast by shopping our Amazon affiliate link, buying our merch, or commissioning your own movie. Find all information by visiting our website, shatpod.com. Also, check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review TV series such as Lovecraft Country, Westworld, True Detective, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, and Watchmen. Find all information on our website, shatpod.com/TV, wherever fine podcasts can be found, including iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe, and if you stop by iTunes, please leave a 5-star review. That helps the podcast grow. On behalf of my co-hosts, Ash and Big D, I'm Gene Lyons. Be sure to join us next week for the following movie.
Every day, Jacob Singer goes to work.
What's wrong?
It's just one of those days.
And every day, he wonders what is happening to him.
Maybe it's the pressure, Jake.
They're like demons, Jess. They weren't human.
What were they, Jake?
Let me look at your hand.
You have a very strange line. See, according to this, you're already dead.
Something's wrong, Jake. They're coming after me. I don't know who they are or what they are, but they're gonna get me, and I'm scared, Jake. I've seen them too.
Maybe the demons are real.
It's running 106 feet with...
This is barbaric.
I can get rid of the demons.
Who are you?
I can block the ladder. Where are you taking me? Where am I?
Where do you want to go?
Home.
This is your home. You're dead.
I'm not dead.
What are you then?
I'm alive.